Hello and welcome to another edge of your seat, exciting episode of Agentless. This is the podcast where we talk about CISOs, that's me, and my partner in this vendor-CISO relationship dialogue, partners will come up later, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, is Dave Cole, a recovering security vendor and current CTO extraordinaire. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm building stuff. I'm building the future of workflow.
Ooh, that sounds exciting. Let's hold that for another episode. But speaking of partnerships, partnerships. You know what? You might as well sometimes call them partnerships. I think there's some that are partnerships. Here's my definition of because partnership covers a lot, especially from your perspective, right, as a vendor.
Yes, yeah. There's many flavors here. I mean, first off, there's the totally fake and superficial partnership that we talk ourselves into that we really have as vendor and CISOs, and I'm that's a little punitive, but I don't think it's overstated. And then there's the tech partnerships that are out there, and then there's services partners and reseller partners and all that. So there's more flavors than that too, but I think there's many flavors of it, and they all have their own dysfunctions. They have shared dysfunctions and their own dysfunctions, and they have successes too. I've seen it on all sides. But if we're to pick on one at the start and just pick a starting point, how about this? Jason, we don't see you as a customer. We see you as a true partner at Acme Corp. How's that make you feel?
Oh. Dirty. I've heard that. I was going to make up if I had a Class A stock option for every company that used that line on me, every vendor that used that line on me, I'd be a very rich man. They market it as this marriage, right? It's like, hey, this is really a marriage of our companies working together to build this great thing, and it's more like Tinder or Hinge, with the add-on that I'm paying you to like me. Because at the end of the day, I'm paying you MFers. There's no partnership in this. My wife doesn't pay me to be with her. There's no partnership. So the whole idea of this is a partnership, I call shenanigans. Across the board. I don't believe there is such a thing as a partnership. You want to label it that and use it as a sales and marketing term. Well, my recommendation to the CISOs out there listening, use that to your advantage as much as they're using it to yours. But at the end of the day, it is absolutely not a partnership. It is a sales and buyer relationship. And they should be doing what you're the one spending the money. Make them do what you need.
Yeah, I mean, you sure as hell don't want to go in with the expectation that's what is required is a partnership in order for you to get the value. If it ends up being a partnership, high five, that's great. But having said that, at the end of the day, I give you money, you give me product, it achieves the expected outcome. That needs to be good enough. And if it requires a partnership, maybe that means something went wrong. I mean, really, does it have to be harder than that?
No, it doesn't. But it definitely around partnership. It gives me the heebie-jeebies when people want to talk like that, because they're trying to build a emotional, personal relationship with you from a sales perspective is what I think they're trying to do with that. It's not really. Sometimes there might be. I'll give some leeway to if you're giving it to me at cost and you're a startup and you need my brand, as part of your marketing, and you're giving it to me at cost, I would accept that as a partnership. Yeah,
a matter of fact, we're standing up our new platform for the future of workflow, and for
next
that
episode,
it's a real design partnership, because we tell them look, we're literally building this product right now. You're going to help us decide what's there, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't there, and truthfully, we need your input on what to build. One of the things we're deciding on is data sources. And they're like, well, what data sources are you building for? It's like, well, right now we're doing more structured data stores, probably Salesforce next. But if you have something you really need, raise your hand, because that's where we're going to focus, because there's a bajillion of these things out there. Okay, that's a real partnership. We're going to be building things based upon your input, and it's brand new. 6 months from now, 9 months from now, I won't be taking on design partners. I won't. It'll be done. So I do think there's moments in time and situations where it genuinely is true. And if you say you're paying me and it's a product right now, it would actually be disingenuous. Like it would be disingenuous for me to say that. But having said that, the bulk of the time when it's used is like, no, dude, you have a thing. I need it to work. And largely, I don't want to interact with you unless like there's something amazing and new that caught my attention. I need something you don't have, or there's a problem. Like other than that, just like, I don't need a partnership. I'm just looking for a product.
Same. Can we, I don't know, how many times have I asked a high five over video?
Yeah.
High five icon. I completely agree. But, I heard this really cool way of labeling. So there's you mentioned 3 different types of partnerships. You mentioned services and technical partnerships. I want to talk about those really, because those are also challenging as a CISO to deal with sometimes. And, I heard this great term, they call it outsourcing trust. I was like, oh, that actually makes sense. Like you as a vendor, Dave, have to trust this partner, whether it's a technical partner that you're integrating with or services, somebody who's going to, cook your recipe the way that you want it made and hope that they match the recipe and know how to cook it and how to serve it. So what are some of the things that, because I've been burned by this, I can get into that later, but I've been burned by partners. How do you as a vendor, how do you know who to trust? Where do you even start?
It's gross. I mean, so right now, I'll tell you, as a customer, I just inherited a new team, and I inherited a failed project that has a very large CRM vendor, who anybody could name, and it has a partner, and I got into it, and it was about to launch, and I had just said, well, just show it to me, walk me through it. And it was messy. There was a bunch of problems and so forth. I said, well, let's pause on this. Let's dig into it. Like I've seen enough for the moment. And you get into it and you realize there's like 7 projects nestled inside this thing. So you start unpacking, right? Like a Russian doll. And now I can't get the first phase of this thing out. And I don't know whose fault it is or what happened. I don't know if it's a service partner who did the implementation, that we gave them bad data, or that the software truly doesn't work. It's one of these. It's just a bad love triangle. So I'll tell you, like, that's the failure state. It really is. And I'll say this, like, we also as a company, and this has been true in security, we have very good partners who build things on top of our platform that are things that we don't want to build or we're not equipped to. Okay. So it's got to be, I think my point is, like, it's got to be worth it, right? If you're going to do this, like, make sure that it's worth it, because when it goes wrong, like in the situation I have on my hand, it's messy. And as a customer, it's painful. And I can't tell where it failed. I just want to fling it away from me and start over, which I may. That's kind of my leading option right now. On the flip, like, we have a bunch of partners who genuinely take what we've built and turn it into a solution where the customer wouldn't have been able to be successful with the product, properly designed even, but they just wouldn't have been able to be successful without the partner. So it's like, they're necessary.
You totally get they're necessary. Each use case in a dream state sounded great, but how do you know that they built a great, you just mentioned the cybersecurity. Sometimes they build stuff on our product that we would want to build. How do you know it's secure? Number one, what is the normal vetting process that vendors like you go through, if there is any?
To choose a partner?
Yeah, to choose. You know what? You make quality work. You checked our boxes. We vetted you. Is there any vetting process? What's that like? Or is it you meet in a bar, cocktail napkin, let's do business?
It depends. I mean, I'll say.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. But I think, look, companies that do this well and are mature have a real partner program. And part of having a partner program is you check references. I can tell you the project that's failed for me now, where I'm basically behaving like a customer, no one checked references. And I've asked a couple times, I said, let me talk to a customer who's been successful with this solution. I've asked for weeks, there's no one. Crickets. So I went back into my portcos to my private equity friends and said, can you just tell me what the other portcos are doing? Like, bring me a few portcos who are doing this. You know what we found? There's not a single instance of anyone inside our portfolio companies that have been successful with the approach we're taking. That's where it should have started. You know, like, ask for a reference, ask for a case study. If you can't produce one, then what are you pretending not to know? This isn't going to work. But I'll tell you, like, as a vendor, if you're creating a partner program, your job is to do that on behalf of your customers first. So they don't have to, right? Like, hey, we chose these guys because in a similar class of technology, they killed it. And their customer satisfaction is very high. We talked to their customers. We did our own interviews. And then we also, and this is a common playbook now, we hired a GuidePoint, we hired a TGIS. And you know what? Our independent review of those partners was extraordinary. We talked to happy people and so forth. So look, you've got to check. You got to do a background check. It takes a different flavor with partners, but having said that, do a background check. You know, and sometimes it's doing, you know, your own interviews and case studies and kind of references. Sometimes it's doing private ones if it's a really big partnership. Sometimes it's maybe talking to a VC or someone who's on the board, like talk to a board member and kind of get zeitgeist from someone you trust, get a back channel reference. And it's breaking bread too. Like, you know, when I was talking through partnerships, any significant company, whether it was, you know, CrowdStrike, Tenable, OpenRaven, any of those, it's like you sit down and break bread and see who you're dealing with. You know, I mean, all those things, the programmatic elements, the personal elements, like you got to do your homework because like you said, you're trusting these people with your customers. Like, and when it goes bad, it's really hard for the customer to figure out. And the most sensible thing to do is walk away, is just burn it to the ground, napalm it, walk away.
I have so many questions. I got the GRC person in me questioning, this may not be feasible, but great that you did out of the gate and you onboarded the vendor, the partnership. Next, it's 1 year later. What are you doing to ensure that QA is that quality assurance, that quality is maintained? Do you go back to the review process? I mean, realistically, to be honest, you know, if you ask me, let's take third party risk management, right? Okay, I did my third parties. Most companies are lucky if they can do an annual review because they just don't have the staff and the time. Realistically, are companies doing that? Or you think maybe that's where some of the failures that I've seen out there in the industry, where maybe they started off great, a year or two later, they've kind of dropped the ball, cost cutting, trying to save cost, which is my next question.
Yeah, I think there's healthy partnerships where you're having success and where the momentum naturally carries it forward, right? Like you're doing deals, you're learning together and so forth. Like, that's great. There's instances where the one vendor is neglectful. Look, we are redoing our integrations framework with the new platform. We have some ancient integrations where we haven't been a good partner on our side, you know, just hand on heart, right? Like you go into it, they're old and they should have been updated ages ago.
Right.
And then, you know, you've got like relationships where maybe the partner's usage of your platform and your product is not normal. It's like they're chasing like this edge case that you didn't really intend for the platform to accommodate. And now you're in this weird situation where they're asking for stuff that you really can't do. And what started as a reasonable partnership, you know, your needs have kind of separated out. So there's so many ways for this to get wrong. I think honestly, like it's if you're doing it annually, you're doing it wrong. This should be more like a quarterly thing where you're like, hey, are we still on the same page? Does what made sense in the beginning still make sense? You know, when are you going to update your integration? Which somebody should have said to, you know, my company a long time ago on certain things and waterlined it probably and just said, hey, look, your integration is X years old. You haven't bothered to update this and keep up with this. We're turning you off. You know, why not? Like, yeah, I think at some points you have to have the guts, the huevos, as we say here in SoCal, to do that.
How much is cost of the partner? How much the partner is going to give you back a factor? And are partners tiered differently? Like, hey, that's a low cost partner, but boy, we make a shit ton of money, so let's give them this business. Always,
I mean, it has to make sense, right?
Calculation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it has to make sense. I mean, all the big companies have tiered partnership programs, right? Just like anything. But smaller companies, you don't have that. But smaller companies, you're so starved for resources typically that it either works or it doesn't. And if it works, amazing, you keep doing it. And if it doesn't work, you drop it like it's hot because you can't afford to put resources into it. So I think you almost get more like zombie partners in big companies than you do small ones. But you definitely get like neglected partners in small companies too, big and small. It's just the programs are different. And the bigger the company too, like the more incentives they have are like, hey, we have this big conference coming up and like you can buy a paid slot. So, you go to Palo Alto, Checkpoint, CrowdStrike, all these like customer partner conferences, and people are paying to be there. And is there a genuine partnership? Hard to tell, hard to tell. But again, how would I start to figure it out? Show me 2 or 3 customers. Let me talk to them and have them tell me how they were successful, right?
I did not do that when I first worked with the vendor. I have one specific. It was a SIM vendor, and we did a full deployment, ripped out one solution, put in this solution with the promises made by the vendor itself, and then the partner. I'm even assuming the partner dropped the ball. To be honest, it was such a bad experience that it then reflected on the product. I go, your product is ass. Like nothing was done right with this, and then the product was saying, "Oh, that's because our partner just screwed up and did stuff differently." And
you don't get to say that, do you? Like you don't get to say that. Sorry, dude. Yeah,
it's like like my Tinder date. You cheated on me. I'm out later. There's no coming back from that. You're done. You dropped the ball. It's a really bad analogy, but I was trying to go with the Hinge Tinder analogy I did earlier. What would make me walk away? And yeah, you dropped it. I'm not coming back unless you give me a whole free year and a free implementation. Which,
Yeah, but it's like, look, that's the person that you brought to me. That's your partner. Like, you don't get to disavow it in the same way that's like, someone in your family, right? It's like, oh yeah, don't mind my husband, don't mind my wife, don't mind my kid. Like, actually, like, you're all one family, and you actually have to consider that. Like if you bring a partner forward, you're basically extending that trust and saying that they are able to represent you in this situation, and you're trusting them with the most cherished thing, which is a customer relationship. And if you haven't vetted them, shame on you, right? It's going to come back and bite you. And look, some of these partnerships are big enough to where like you're going to have a few bad experiences. That's okay, but you better have a hell of a lot more better ones, like a Palo Alto and like an Ernst & Young or, anybody else in the Final Four. Like, are they going to have a couple bad projects? Sure, of course. But like, you better have a whole bunch of other really good ones in order to make that work, It's just, it's interesting. We saw that a lot, like on the data security side, like all the bigger projects involve these large services vendors. And I think it was fine for them. But the problem was the vendors that were involved in data security, like the bulk of the value for the customer was in the first year. And then oftentimes, like, there would be a non-renewal or there'd be retention issues later because after you get the visibility and initial control, like, they got the bulk of the value. And then, like, the services partner thinks that it's great. The actual vendor's like, what the hell? Like, and, so there's so many ways it can go wrong, and very few situations, I think, where you look at it and you're like, hot damn, that was great for customers, great for partners, great for the vendor. I think it's very rare. I think if we're to be honest with ourselves, it's super rare when actually it's good for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, most of my commentary, I want to call out two things, was around services. I wasn't necessarily focused on technical, that's kind of a whole nother topic for me, but around the services of who is actually deploying, implementing, managing, and maintaining the product for that first year. And I heard the markups on that are insane.
Well, when do you use a services partner for a product? And does it make you not want to use the product if it requires a services partner, Jason Loomis?
Good question. Certain technologies are going to require it. I would say certain technologies like SIM, when you have to pull out all your correlations, all your log sources, normalize them into a new product. If they're not out of the box normalization, or you have unique stuff, which most SIMs do, that's something that absolutely sure, we could struggle through it, but I'd rather have somebody who has experience with it. Some tooling is that way. A lot of out-of-the-box tooling, like your previous company was pretty much out of the box, point, click, done. A lot of SaaS solutions are that way. Wiz I'm a customer of Wiz. CNAPT, it's out of the box, point, click, give them the keys, AWS access, you're done. Most of it is not, but there's some stuff out there that professional services can help. And it's critical for the product to work correctly and to get the value out of it as soon as we need to get the value out of it.
I honestly think that business model is going to be transformed completely by AI. Instead of like the big thing being software as a service, it's going to be service as software. And this is, I don't know, there's a bunch of people saying this now, but Alessio Finelli, CTO at Decibel, was a guy who said this first for me. I was like, ooh, yeah. And in truth, like we're doing this now. AI is so good at translating formats that formerly, someone told me, we're going to do this. We have a competitor who's abandoned a portion of their business, and we need to do translation from one format to another. And so initially they're like, oh, we'll hire some consultants. I'm like, the hell you will. Like translation from one format to another is core AI. Like, hold my beer, like stand back, we'll get this done. It'll be, it'll be service as software. And I think a lot of services work, bluntly, is just going to go away. And I think it's going to be part of it is just AI will handle it and will broker that on our behalf. But also, I think, too, a lot of the situation where partners were needed and where it was more difficult was because the vendor APIs sucked. And yes, like it was so common because it was hard to create good APIs and good SDKs around them and so on. And I think with what's there today, with the way that tooling is, if you are really thoughtful about like API creation and, if you consider DX, developer experience, on equal footing as UX, and you do that from the beginning, like we're doing with our new platform, I put one of my best engineering managers, my head of PM on it. And as we get into it, you can avoid those anti-patterns. And I'm looking at them like, we'll still need partners. We will, because we're a no-code platform. We target citizen developers who don't know how to develop and so forth. They'll still need partners in some situations. But I think they're going to need a lot less just because
How many years
APIs would be good.
2, 5? What do you think?
I think if you're replatforming now or in the near future, you have a disproportionate advantage. We're at a moment in time, I think, where there's a huge benefit from replatforming because you can reconsider everything at a moment when technology inflection is so profound. And I think it's going to depend upon if the company just takes it on the chin and does it and does the right thing, then they'll benefit from it. But we're going to be here 5 years from now, and there'll be companies who are in the same boat they are today just because they didn't have the guts to replatform, or couldn't change what they could to make it more modern. But yeah, I think we're going to have much, much better APIs. We're going to have agentic communication where in some situations, the APIs will be completely obscured and it'll be, one model-backed agent talking to another. I'm not sure there's going to be nearly as much need for partnerships as there was before in the future, just because the interfaces are going to be so much more natural and easy, and APIs are just much easier to create now. The playbook is more obvious and so on. I mean, look, 5 years ago we were talking about 65% of ML projects, machine learning projects, failed, and then all of a sudden it wasn't true anymore, and everything was succeeding. I think we're going to be in a similar case where you're going to be doing a lot of your own custom integrations just because it's going to be so much easier than what it was before. That's my hypothesis.
That service as a software idea is phenomenal. I'm literally thinking how I could start that tomorrow. I don't think I can just yet, but it's got me thinking. Good stuff, man. So what about this whole move towards building your own? Because subscription models are just everything's subscription. Now a lot of people are like, wait, do I just keep paying the licensing costs, or I just hire a couple developers and some AI to go build my own solution for this? How does that model that you're talking about fit into that? That's almost like you want a middleware that's AI for that just an AI middleware that can handle the communications between anything home built or anything in the wow. No, I'm thinking. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm on a tangent. It got me excited. This is a lot more exciting than usually excited.
I think, look, AI Zapier, right? I mean, it's kind of what we're talking about is, and there's companies out there endeavoring to do it that are being funded right now and part of this huge AI boom where it's like, hey, we're going to have like agents available and there's no common AI agent framework, agentic framework right now that's predominant. And we're gonna make available a bunch of tools, and then you connect it up, and off you go. And to a certain degree, that's kind of what we're building too, but for specific areas and with a heavy data emphasis, sensitive data emphasis, going back to our Open Raven roots. But yeah, I think you're gonna, if you look at it like Klarna, the Swedish buy now pay later company, famously announced that they got rid of Salesforce and Workday recently. And there's a very rich debate going on where it's like, well, will these system of records like that even exist in the future? And I think part of the pain with them, with these system of record solution, is the services and all the tech integrations that go stale and painful and so forth. And I think it's sort of like an indictment against them and against this model that's so hopelessly complex and that isn't very good in many instances. Like it goes wrong more often than it goes right. That we look at this and say, oh, thank God, maybe AI can get rid of this tangled mess of like broken integrations and expensive deployments with a ton of configuration. Like I personally, as a product person, I find it offensive that I can't use Salesforce out of the box. I have to pay someone to modify it.
You have to buy a gaggle of developers to build it for you and customize it for you. Yeah, but that's exactly a great use of AI that can get rid of that.
Right. And I think Salesforce would agree with that too. And they announced this big Agentforce thing, and you can see them heading in that way. And we're a big Salesforce partner and developer, and I like our account rep. I like a lot of the things they're doing. I think it makes sense, but I do think they're going to be under a tremendous amount of pressure, these ecosystem plays, because they're so expensive, they're so partner heavy, it's so complex. And AI is going to challenge that
those
model deeply.
Partners might want to invest in a lobbyist, a Salesforce lobbyist.
Yeah, well, look,
start buying some dinners.
The case for these big system of records is you need security, you need compliance, you need one neck to choke. There's all these reasons why there are enterprise capabilities there and things that they offer that are compelling, and God knows there's a boatload of margin I think that could be eaten into if they had to in order to compete better.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to go away. They're too entrenched anytime soon. But like, am I a buyer of any of those stocks right now? No, I think they're all going to see serious compression and challenges, and I think the partnership ecosystem and everything is going to shift as a result of AI and modern development techniques, which use AI in order to make it just much easier to integrate and for systems to talk to one another. That's my hunch and kind of some of my assumptions being baked into our platform now.
How much for, I want to segue a little bit to partners as a pro, like almost as the reseller, like your partners that are doing the pro services or technical integrations for people. And they're really kind of, in essence, reselling your product, right? Like, so my full-time job, we have a big partner ecosystem network that, does a lot of our sales work because it's them that's out there pounding the pavement, getting the business, and they just partner with us using our product and deploying it. How do you see those relationships? Do you see them, how do you vet those relationships? First question. And then second, how do you see that changing with everything you just put in under the AI focus?
Yeah. I'm not sure AI changes that so much. So here's like the simple transactional one. If I as a young vendor can use another vendor that you, Acme Corp, big company, already have a relationship with, and I have to give them a couple points or whatever in order to get the deal done in their paper that gets it done this quarter or just gets it done at all, no brainer. super easy. So there's like these transactional relationships that actually are really beneficial. And Amazon has gobbled up a lot of those, right? I don't think it's so much in GCP and Azure, but Amazon being able to transact through their marketplace, like they're just, I think they're really the new VAR in a lot of ways. They are. It just makes it easy. You put it on your Amazon bill. Nobody questions it because they have to get into the yucky Amazon bill. The FinOps people see it. It's like, oh, you mean it counts against our enterprise discount program? Oh, yeah, Skippy, don't worry about it. Slides right through.
That's a little. That's a CISO secret. Everybody.
Yeah. Oh, did I say that out loud? Did I say it out loud?
You did. Hopefully, my
thank
FP&A
God I'm
people
not
aren't.
in cyber.
My FP&A people are not listening. They never listen to this stuff.
Yeah. So I think that's one type of relationship. And then there's the bigger relationship. And curious as to your take on this, but it's the folks like, I'll use an example like Trace3, who for a long time didn't want to do anything in our space. No one did. And then all of a sudden one day I ran into my guy over there and he's like, oh yeah, we have a group working on your stuff now. And they're doing evaluation projects where people are asking them like about this new space to make sense out of it. I'm like, yeah, I think in a new space where you're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, and also like the affect of 2020, 2021, you have a lot of products, some of them which may not work, the way that they should because it was just a crazy time. Like, I think it's very rational to hire a value-added reseller or a services outfit to say, hey, come in and make sense of this. This is an important area to us. Come in and present out this landscape and tell us what has worked for in the real world for customers. Makes sense to me, even if you don't want them to implement it, makes sense to do like a lightweight project like that. When have you done that? What's your logic on it?
My logic on when I've repeat the
when
question?
you engage with a value-added reseller or a services partner, like what are situations where you would pull them in?
Rare. Typically it's around the pro services. That's what, like in my experience, and has
pen test, black box test, white box test, that sort of thing.
Deployment, like the SIM opportunity.
Oh, okay, like the SIM. Okay,
yeah, but that's really it. Otherwise, to me, a VAR is just the points. Hey, if I can go to the VAR and get better discounts than my procurement team can, I'll go to the VAR. Because they can have a enterprise pricing with them or some other pricing. But VAR adds no value, no pun intended, for me. No VAR I've worked with yet adds value, to be honest. So,
or if I want here first, there's no V in VAR. They're just an R.
Unless you count Dodger tickets as the value, sure, great. You get Dodger tickets and Laker tickets and stupid alcohol. We've talked about this before. Stupid race car driving shit. No, VARs don't do anything for me. Partners do. So a good partner that can actually deploy. Which my brain is so hard pressed to think of one. In my experience, 10 years, have I worked with a partner that was working with because I've just had two bad tastes in my mouth. Honestly, don't think I've had a good taste. I'm going to carefully watch my wording on this. Ever had a good taste in my mouth? I don't think I've ever had a good taste in my mouth from any of those relationships. And most of them have turned out pretty shitty.
Agree.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Right, advice for CISOs?
That if you're taking on a project and you should
check
ask,
for references. Yes.
Check the references.
That could have saved me with my two. I never did that. Yep.
Same with the project I'm now. Got into it. There's $500,000 at stake, and I asked, like, all right, so who did we talk to before we did this?
Trust but verify.
Yeah,
I have a tattoo with that, and I didn't do it.
Crazy, like both the tattoo and the fact that it doesn't get done, both crazy. Yeah. But I think to me that's the big one. And look, these services like Tiga's, GuidePoint, the rest of them, like, don't be afraid to use them. Like, it's pretty cheap, especially if you're spending $500,000, $1 million or something. Go out, pay for a few competitive interviews. Like, why not interrogate someone? I mean, literally, like, I think we could have spent 1/10 of what we spent in this project if we'd have just talked to our portcos now, knowing what I know now, potentially. Yeah. We certainly could have been done already with good results if we'd have taken a different approach that's proven that we've heard about now after just talking to people. So do your research just like you would for your house. When I was, my analogy for this was like, would you have a contractor come into your house and like redo your kitchen if you didn't like talk to someone who was a happy customer beforehand? I don't think you would. At least I wouldn't. You know, why would you do that here?
I found my contractor on Thumbtack. I don't know about you. That was big sarcasm. Surprised I didn't get a bigger laugh out of that one. That's like going on Tinder to find your wife. Wait, that probably a lot of people are doing that these days.
Careful, yeah.
My advice to CISOs: one, when you hear the word partnership directly from the vendor within the first couple meetings, run. You can do a spit take. Spit takes are always good. Do a spit take. Be like, look, man, and just call it out. Be like, I don't know what you mean by this partnership, unless they are early stage, like Dave mentioned earlier, where it is a true partnership. They're giving it to you at cost, and you're really helping them build their product out. And there are a few cases like that. I've been involved in a couple of those, and they've been very promising, worked out well. But for the large majority, in my opinion, CISOs, you're going to get told that you can work it different ways. You can do the spit take, like I said. Maybe a better way is to use that back at them whenever they're negotiating for price. Be like, I thought this was a partnership. Using my brand, we want to work with you on this, and use those same sales tactics back, in my opinion. As for the other types of partnerships are probably more critical. Man, still Dave's. Just I'm embarrassed that I didn't do this, but yeah, vet. Trust but verify. Go check, get references, especially for large integrations or something. If your job is riding on, or your team, or your whole year's strategy is riding on that deployment, man, definitely get third-party opinions.
All right. That seems like a good point to seg into our final portion of this pod here. What do you have for us today, Mr. Loomis?
I have pros and cons. Usually, what are you into? I'm into pros and cons. So I'm like wins and loss. Like here's a pro for my experience and a con for my experience. Let's start with the con. I was recommended a book called Atomic Habits. It's pretty famous. I think a lot of people have read it. I was like, I was excited for this. It came third time it's come across my plate. I'm like, all right, I'm going to jump in and start reading it. I was very disappointed. I'm about a quarter of the way in. And I mean, so far I'm just unimpressed. So for individuals that may have a hard time forming habits, which is all about atomic habit, like just replicable, easy to replicate small habits, but that's not me. And to be honest, I'd be hard pressed if it's most successful people, because I don't think we'd get to where we were if we wouldn't have the ability to form habits. For example, my weight loss journey of 15 years was all structured on, I formed a habit to eat well, and I formed a habit to exercise all the effing time. It's a habit for me. I can't not go to the gym. I can't not do that stuff. And I knew that going into it, if that's what I wanted to change, I needed a habit to do that. So this book is pretty much idiot's guide to doing that. So yeah, it's kind of at a loss. I'm going to give it another, couple chapters, see if there's some light bulbs that go off and fireworks, but I don't have high hopes. I feel that's a loss. A win.
I'd bail out.
Yeah.
I'd bail out and try Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg and see if that lands any better for you. It may just be the subject matter, but I'm not sure it changed my life or anything, but I like how he described habit loops and what to do with them. And I generally like his stuff quite a bit. Like his recent book, Super Communicators, was really, really quite good. So yeah, try Duhigg instead.
Okay. I'll try.
See if it lands with you a little better.
On it. Great. And my pro is Colin Farrell has to get an Emmy for his acting in The Penguin. That thing is nuts. That's the new DC show on Showtime where it's taken from the Batman, the other Batman, I guess. Yeah, but
yeah.
Whoa. Like, this guy is just unrecognizable as this character. And it's just, guy deserves like an Academy Award, like, even though that doesn't happen on television. He needs an Emmy.
Yeah.
The guy's...
It's really good.
He is amazing in it. The show's...
Is the show good?
In 8 out of 10, yes. I'm hooked. I'm definitely hooked for the show. But a lot of that 8 is just watching this guy and this character, this penguin. You don't even recognize him as Colin Farrell. I knew he could act from some other stuff that he's done. The one about where he turns into an animal thing was great.
Yeah.
There's some stuff, but holy crap. Yeah, check it out. That's a pro. That was a good positive in my life.
All right. We will.
What are yours?
I will check it out.
Give me a win and a loss, or a pro and a con.
I'll give what I think is going to be a win, and what I think is going to be a loss. So this came up recently, this beautiful book. It's Susanna Clark who wrote Pure Nisi, and she wrote Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. and it's this fun little illustrated book about a Midwinter's Tale kind of thing. So I think this is going to be a win. Her stuff is usually pretty fun, and it's lightweight, and I think I needed something lightweight because my think it's a loss is I talked myself into taking on the Infinite Jest, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to finish Wallace's The Infinite Jest. It is like I'm trying it as an audiobook, and I'm about an hour in, and it's a 64-hour monster. I think it's like 1,000 pages, and it's about tennis. And so it should be like, or at least, no, that's not right. Tennis is one of the major things and themes in the book. So it's like, oh, sweet. Like, this is like this great literary achievement. I'm very interested in tennis. I love some of the great authors and so forth, and it's supposed to be this compact, dense, wonderful book. Great, and I'm into it, and I'm like, wow, I just don't know that I'm up for this. So, approach with caution.
How far along are you?
I think I'm about
164th.
I think I'm 163rd of the way in. So I will keep you updated on my journey with the Infinite Jest, but I find myself like constantly not wanting to listen to it and trying to find a podcast to listen to instead, which is not a good sign. Yeah, that's a big danger sign.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey everybody, thanks for your time and thanks for listening in.